Hi, morning. I just realized that I probably need to change my background to.
Okay.
I downloaded it, but.
I think in my case, I need to mirror it, kind of. How do I do that?
I think you need to uncheck the mirror. Maybe.
Hi, morning.
Morning.
Video setting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, morning, Tiong.
Morning. Yeah, hi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. We will be starting the webinar now.
Okay. Thanks, Janice. Okay, Janice, maybe you can let us know when we can get started, when I should start talking.
You can start now, Prof Lim.
Okay, all right, thanks. Good morning. Thanks for taking time to join us this morning at the CHS Open House. CHS, of course, by now you should know, stands for the College of Humanities and Sciences. So for this hour, we're going to be talking about the XDP in data science and economics. Okay, XDP stands for Cross-Disciplinary Program, Cross-Disciplinary Degree Program, and this particular one is in data science and economics. And so I'll get started to tell you what this program is about, how it was conceived, what you can expect to learn in the program, and how that will help you to build a meaningful career subsequently. All right, so some developments in the world that will require the interface of knowledge and skills from both data science and economics. With us this morning are actually Associate Professor Chen Ying and Dr. Dennis Kachenka, who are also co-directors of the program. I am Associate Professor Lim Tiong. So we'll get started. I'm going to assume that most of attendees have already gone to the earlier talk by the co-deans, as well as the various vice deans from the two faculties making up the college. And so I'll quickly talk about the model that we have here in NUS for cross-disciplinary education. The idea was conceived and brought into fruition last year when we have our first intake of students into cross-disciplinary degree programs. There are 3 and it's concurrently running right now. So this particular one is on data science and economics. And so the idea behind coming up with degree programs that are cross-disciplinary in NUS is that we are attempting to align, okay, the certain degree programs in a better manner with the nature of work in the context of the 4th Industrial Revolution. And what you can expect would be great flexibility in acquiring education across, in this instance, data science and economics. And furthermore, the program will equip students with the ability to integrate knowledge across both of these disciplines to solve real-world problems. So, so perhaps before I go into the details of the program itself, what kind of real-world problems are relevant, okay, to data science and economics? So there are basically 3 main areas, okay, that motivated the design of this program here. The first is the digital economy. So this is an observation from TechCrunch, okay, and it lists In this instance here, 4 companies that are very well known internationally. There's Uber, Facebook, Alibaba, and Airbnb. And each of these companies provides services. Okay, for example, Uber is the world's largest, if not largest, one of the largest taxi companies. But what's curious about Uber is that it owns no vehicles. Facebook is the world's most popular media owner, or again, possibly one of the most popular media owners. It creates no content. Alibaba is the world's most valuable retailer and it has no inventory. And then Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. So, you know, this sort of whets an appetite for what's going on in the digital economy. And there is a formal definition. The World Economic Forum and the G20 has a definition for the digital economy, and it goes as follows. It is the economic activity that uses digitized information and knowledge as key factors of production, modern information networks as an important activity space, as well as information and communications technology to drive productivity growth. So in this instance, there is a platform. It's you know, a virtual platform on which economic activity takes place. So in layman terms, many of us, if not all of us, engage in this kind of economic activity. This is from us, you know, connecting online between people, businesses, devices, data, and processes, and then, you know, making economic transactions on these platforms. And the aggressive use of data is transforming how businesses are structured, how firms interact, how consumers obtain services, information, and goods. I think many of you are perhaps too young to, you know, see how the way consumers interact with businesses has evolved over the years. Okay, I'm older, all right, and you know, over the years we have seen how the shift, okay, in how we, you know, as consumers interact with businesses has changed over the years, and it's interesting. And the digital economy is a key pillar of Singapore's Smart Nation goals. And among other things, besides, you know, having the mission or objective of encouraging more and more Singaporeans to, you know, get involved in the digital economy, the other consequence is that there's going to be job opportunities in this area as well, which I will talk about later on. The other factor or development that motivates the design of the curriculum is financial technology, in short, fintech. It refers to the integration of technology and offerings by financial services companies in order to improve the use and delivery to consumers. The conventional way, of course, of interacting with financial services companies, mostly banks or investment companies, I mean, there's conventional ways of interacting with them. And fintech came along, or you know, and there are now many startups that are actually offering financial services to customers who used to be, under conventional ways of interacting with financial services companies, used to be underserved or unserved. So there are many new offerings here under the umbrella of fintech. And what do they make use of? They make use of machine learning, predictive analytics, as well as data-driven marketing, all right, to expand financial inclusion to underserved and unserved customers. And in so doing, they are also able to cut down on operational costs, and this differentiates them from conventional financial services companies. So some examples here will be digital banking, robo-advisors, giving automated investment advice, insurtech, regtech, which includes such things as compliance and anti-fraud. So here's an example of digital banking. I mean, if you recall, in December 2020, the Monetary Authority of Singapore announced that it's going to issue 4 digital bank licenses. Okay, and for example, one has gone to the Grab Singtel consortium. Incidentally, if you are interested later on, I think at 1 o'clock, there is actually an industry panel, an employer forum, basically, which talks about interdisciplinarity for the future workspace. And one of the speakers, Dr. Geraldine Wong, besides being an NUS alumni in statistics and data science, is also the chief data officer at the Grab Singtel Consortium. So you can go to that talk, listen to Dr. Wong, and perhaps ask her questions about what digital banking entails for the company she represents. So this is an example of digital banking developments in Singapore. The other development that is an anchor of the curriculum would be digital currencies. And many of the digital currencies perhaps we are familiar with, or it's in the news, would relate to Bitcoins, and that uses blockchain as the backbone. Blockchain is a digital ledger technology that allows for keeping track of transactions in a distributed and trusted fashion. So this is quite different than conventional ways of keeping track of transactions, as well as authentication, which is more centralized. So in this instance here, it replaces a need for a third-party institution to provide trust, for activities such as financial contract and voting. So Bitcoins and other digital currencies are well-known examples. And last February, Tesla actually bought quite a bit of investment in Bitcoin. I don't know since then what they have done with the Bitcoin, and they were talking about accepting Bitcoins as payment. But that's what's in the news. What's perhaps getting less limelight in the news is the fact that many central banks around the world, MAS included, are actually looking at the possibility of launching central bank digital currencies, what is known as CBDC. So in relation to this, it's going to be many opportunities also for employment to help with the design as well as implementation of CBDCs. All right, so these are some motivators for the design of this program. So what is this program about, or what does it give you, or what does it help you to do? So this is the cross-disciplinary degree program in data science and economics. So these are the short forms: XDP for cross-disciplinary degree program, DSE for data science and economics. Successfully completing this program, students would receive the Bachelor of Science honors degree with a major in data science and economics. This program is jointly offered by DSDS. My department is now Department of Statistics and Data Science. So DSDS Mathematics. Prof Tiong is representing that department. We are in the Faculty of Science, and Economics in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Dr. Kachanka is representing the Econs department, and this is under, of course, the umbrella of the College of Humanities and Sciences. The tight integration between data science and economics within a degree program is, as far as we know, the first of its kind in Singapore. So students will be equipped with strong foundational knowledge in data science and economics, and more importantly, practical experience in the empirical analysis of economic and financial data. And the objective of this program is to produce graduates who can make effective policy and business decisions anchored on data and help to drive innovation in this area, in such things as the digital economy, digital currency, as well as fintech. So the curriculum is designed with tight integration of knowledge and skills from both disciplines, data science and economics. I've mentioned this before. These are the three pillars, so to speak, in the design of the curriculum, and therefore you can expect to have access to cross-disciplinary modules on emerging products and technologies, which will include digital currencies, fintech, and digital economy. And within the curriculum are also industry-linked modules and projects. We have introductory modules, and then later on a practice module in which there is substantial involvement from the industry to showcase what is done, and perhaps to have students have hands-on practice on the pipeline. And then there is also a capstone project which students can complete in the form of an internship. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about the program structure and perhaps point out some differences between the program structure for the DSE-XDP from the generic program structure for the other programs within the College of Humanities and Sciences. Okay, so if you have gone to the talk earlier, you will probably have seen this being presented, the CHS Common Curriculum. All right, there are in the standard CHS Common Curriculum 13 modules that need to be completed. This includes such things as AI, artificial intelligence, C&E, communities and engagement, data literacy, digital literacy, design thinking, writing, and then there's also Asian studies, humanities, social sciences, scientific inquiry 1, scientific inquiry 2, and then 2 interdisciplinary modules. Okay, so a total of 52 modular credits. In this instance, because the DSE-XDP is cross-disciplinary by design, okay, students in this cross-disciplinary program do not need to fulfill the interdisciplinary module requirements under the common curriculum. Okay, in addition, the data literacy requirement is fulfilled using the gateway module within data science and economics. Okay, so the effective modular credit that needs to be fulfilled is only 40 modular credits, 10 modules. All right, and for the major, which is the data science and economics itself, there are modules that come from the data science and analytics program. There are modules that come from the economics program, and then by design, there are cross-disciplinary modules as well. So a total of 96 modular credits. Okay, this is the direct honors program. So in NUS language, this means that students need to fulfill at least 160 modular credits comprising these requirements, okay, which are 40 modular credits and 96 modular credits respectively. So the balance is 24 modular credits, which students can use freely. They have to complete, okay, the remaining 24 modular credits, but they can do so in whichever way they desire. So these are what we call unrestricted elective modules, which students can then use to perhaps participate in internships, okay, read a minor. A minor in NUS is 20 modular credits, or read a second major. The reason I've graded out a second major is not that you cannot do it, but then typically for students who do so, who are more ambitious and more able to do so, you will have to be prepared to exceed the 160 MCs minimum requirements. Okay, so these are ways in which students can use to complete the unrestricted elective modules. Okay, so very quickly, what's within the data science and economics major requirements? There are foundations in both data science and economics, and these will include such things or modules from computer science, modules from mathematics, modules from statistics, and of course data analytics, and then modules from economics. Okay, I won't go through the specific list of modules that's available on the CHS and the department websites. Okay, you can go there and take a look. We'll be happy to answer some questions later on, but we won't go through the details. What I really want to talk about are the cross-disciplinary modules, okay, 20 MCs within the 96 MCs for major requirements. And those would include the introductory module as well as the practice module in year 3. There are also specially curated and designed modules for relating to the digital economy, fintech, digital currency. There's also sense-making, case analysis modules, and the capstone project. So these are the modules that allow students to, talk about and experience the integration between data science and economics. And this is what actually prepares them for the industry, okay? Because then you don't have two disciplines that you learn that are kind of on their own, and then you have to figure out the integration. It's part and parcel of the program. Okay, so besides some taught modules, there are also opportunities for experiential learning. So internships are possible, and in fact, highly encouraged. Within the program, there's the capstone project. Okay, overseas student exchange is slowly recovering. Okay, so if you join us this August, in a couple of years' time, it can be expected that overseas student exchange will, be back to normal. So that's an opportunity to go overseas to a partner university, spend a semester there, and then you learn about how you would, live on your own. All right. And then, of course, you get to be immersed in the culture of the country that you happen to be in, and then it enlarges your global view, basically. Okay, and we have also 2 data science sense-making modules in which students can work on hackathons, okay, hosted by industry partners in economics and finance, as well as business and commerce. What are the career prospects? I don't have hard data yet because we only had the first intake last year, but market sentiment tells us that data science professionals with knowledge in economics or vice versa, economists with knowledge in data science analytics are highly sought after. Okay, that's because there is an increasing need for extensive collection and processing, as well as analysis of economic data. So these are indicative sectors or companies or organizations, okay, that have actually advertised for for candidates who have knowledge and skills in both data science and economics, and it's straightforward, perhaps, to see what demand there is, by perhaps like going onto LinkedIn and searching for jobs that require skills and knowledge from both disciplines. Okay, you will get a sense of how sought after graduates with both sets of skills and knowledge they are, basically. So there's a lot of demand for expertise in both data science and economics. Okay, so the fact that you are in this session means that you are possibly thinking about applying to the data science and economics cross-disciplinary degree program. Okay, you should apply to any program in NUS by going to this website, basically the Office of Admissions. As far as data science and economics are concerned, there is a subject prerequisite that is a very good pass in H2 mathematics. All right, we had the first intake last year, so there is now information on the integrative grade profile. All right, so for the intake last August, the 90th percentile is straight A's in the 3H2 and 1H1 subjects. The 10th percentile is AAAB. So this gives you a sense of the cutoff, okay, into the program. Again, the standard disclaimer is it may or may not apply this year. If we have many good students applying this year, the 10th percentile would increase. All right. I think last year we took in 47 students into this program, and for this intake, pretty much we're also expecting about to take in about 50 students as well. All right, so so that's all I have. All right, perhaps I could call upon Dr. Dennis Kachanka to briefly present on the digital economy. What are some of the problems that are of interest right now, and that gives you a sense of how applicable the skills and knowledge you pick up from this program will be in the future. So over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Tiong. So let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Dennis.
Yeah, okay. So, well, again, a very warm welcome to everybody in the session. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the interface between data science and economics. What kind of, recent developments are there, and what can we look forward to? So this is just an illustration that, even in academia, right, which is kind of a very difficult to permit with new approaches unless they're very successful. We can see that looking at the top 5 journals in economics and the highest quality of working papers, right, which is the cutting edge of the research frontiers, we have seen that the proportion of papers that involves, machine learning, which is basically data science techniques, and in particular text analysis, right, which is again a very popular approach in data science, has increased dramatically since about 2010, and this number keeps growing. So what is behind this success? Well, there is several things that data science techniques can bring to economics. First of all, we can visualize data in new ways, right? Economic data sets keep getting richer. Tech companies such as Amazon, Grab, Shopee, they generate enormous data sets with billions of observations of very high granularity. And, people still want to sort of make sense of what is going on and what are the patterns, right? For policymaking, we need real-time monitoring and some sort of interpretable summary measures to be always, on display. So this is so-called dashboard. And so in this program, right, students will learn some visualization techniques. Here, I am not privy to data from Amazon, right? They guard their data very carefully, but this is just an example of a kind of a simple visualization that you can construct using macroeconomic data, right? For example, there is this famous question whether institutions drive growth, right? And so here you can see an output of a technique called clustering, right? Where without sort of any prior knowledge, you can tell the algorithm to cluster on particular variables. Here it's economic growth and quality of institution, right? As measured by the likelihood of business being expropriated by the state. And you see that it produces different hierarchies of groups, right? So we can see that Singapore, for example, is bundled together with developed countries such as Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the US, right? So countries with high growth and high quality of institutions. At the same time, countries in Africa bundled together as a sort of low growth, potentially lower quality of institutions. Hong Kong has a very special role because of its special status and geography. And so you can sort of try to tease out some of these kind of insights from the data without actually, displaying thousands of observations, right? Another key insight for economists from data science is that nearly everything these days can be turned into data, right? One of the oldest and most useful information storage is actually text, which has been largely ignored in economic research until a few years ago, right? And the nice thing about the times we live in right now is that there are readily developed tools, right, in open source languages such as Python and R that is usable by undergraduates, which allows us to leverage the power of textual data, right? And there is an increasing number of studies relying on text as a source of data, right? So people analyze statements by central banks, people analyze reviews for products, and try to, generate some actionable insight from that. For example, one of the famous examples in the economic literature is the so-called economic uncertainty index by Bloom and co-authors, introduced in 2016. And so you see that this is basically an index that tracks, strictly speaking, the level of economic uncertainty in the world, right, based on text analysis of news articles. And you see that the index spikes around many important events. And so if we look at the more recent period, right, with the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, it kind of shows the new unprecedented level of economic uncertainty, right? And this looks very complicated, right? But actually right now I have an undergraduate honors thesis student who is looking at a version of this index for cryptocurrency uncertainty, and it's actually coming along very nicely. So, this is not something that's out of reach of a DSE student. Another previously largely a new source of data is also images, right? For example, we have free satellite imaging data that can not just be used for mapping land cover and catching terrorists, right? But it contains important insights on economic development, right? Especially valuable for countries where we cannot trust the data that's collected, from the government, right? Such as, for example, North Korea, or we just do not have access to collected data because data is not being collected, right? Which is the case of many countries in Africa, right? But economics looks at a lot of development questions, right? How to combat poverty, inequality, etc. And so actually those countries are very often a subject of study. And so this is an example of a kind of a successful application of data science to satellite data, which allows us to circumvent very expensive data gathering surveys. So what we see here is that on the right, we have the picture, the heat map that's generated by sort of, running a very, very expensive data collection survey, right, which was done by World Resources Institute. And the heat map is basically showing us the poverty rates, right, from high, so very kind of brownish to crimson, right, and low being more green. So if you want, this is like the true state of affairs on the ground that we can only learn through a very expensive survey. And then these are the heat maps, right, generated by analyzing satellite data, right, analyzing various characteristics such as lighting intensity and other indications of economic activity from satellite data. And you see that this can be done at a very small fraction of the cost and pretty accurately without actually going to the ground and collecting data in a very expensive way, right? Often economic data, right, economics has important differences from many other fields where you hear about, machine learning and deep learning, etc., right? Economic data may have its own characteristics, so it may not be big in the usual sense, right? We don't always deal with billions of observations because, the history of economically developed countries rarely exceeds 100 years. And if we think about, GDP growth, which is available only quarterly, we cannot have big data in the sense of very long samples in that, right? However, data can be very rich, right? We can have hundreds of different economic indicators, right, available for, this 100 years or 50 years, depending on the country you look at. Right. And so what happens is the case of so-called high dimensional data, where the number of potential variables, indicators, actually exceeds the number of time periods that we observe the data for. And so this calls for the use of special machine learning methods such as penalized regression and random forest to allow us to tame this sort of high dimensional data and isolate useful predictors via techniques called regularization, right? So this data is readily available. For example, there is the database called the FredMD, maintained by Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, which gives us monthly data on 100 plus variables on the US economy. And the similar databases have been compiled for United Kingdom and Canada, right? So this is open access. You can go and you can flex your modeling muscles on real economic data, right? But it would be very difficult for a person trained in classical econometrics to make full usage of these data sets, right? And this is where the DSE training would come in to differentiate you from, let's say, pure economic majors. Right. Of course, there is true big data applications in economic research as well. Right. There is research on consumer behavior where researchers rely on Nielsen scanner data. Right. So this is data where everything you buy in a supermarket gets recorded for thousands of people. There's credit card data when we're thinking about questions such as how can we detect people who will not pay on their credit card bill, right? There is rich transport data right here in Singapore collected by LTA. Every time you tap your Easy Link, right? That's a data point. And so this is an example from a recent honors thesis in our department. And mind you, this is done by a student who doesn't have the full training of a DSE graduate, and still, so he had to learn a lot of these techniques in his own time by himself. But this shows an example of, what is the economic value of transferring, right, on the MRT versus spending more time on the train. And so this is a kind of example of, one of the popular switches, right, that you can consider. For example, you can just ride the red line from Yio Chu Kang to Clementi, right, or you can take the indirect route, right? You transfer at Bishan and then transfer to the green line again. And you see that in the data, there is both types of commuters, right? Commuters who choose the direct route, commuters who choose the indirect route, right? And so when this data is processed, using economic domain knowledge, you can find out conclusions, for example, such as this student found that each minute transferring on the MRT, say between this station, is perceived at 7% more costly than the time that you're actually just sitting on the train, right? And so average commuter will be willing to travel 8.5 minutes longer to avoid this kind of transfer, right? So this is kind of economic insights that help policymakers shape policy, right? So in economics, right, there is this subdiscipline called econometrics that uses data to answer quantitative questions with the rich history, and the data science tools enrich it immensely. So there is two types of question, causal prediction and non-causal prediction, right? So the example of a causal prediction is, when I change a policy variable, for example, I give every Singaporean $100, what's going to happen, for example, on their expenditure on enrichment classes for children, something like that, right? Whereas the non-causal prediction would be something like, what's going to be the inflation rate in the next quarter, right? And so I'm not going to claim that the variables I use to find that out are going to directly affect the inflation rate, right? But we will have a very good understanding of what's going to be the inflation rate, right? A recent motivation is that a recent Nobel Prize in economics was shared by, among others, by Josh Angrist, who famously said in one of the interviews that he asked, what do you think about data science? And he said, econometrics is data science, right? So quantitative economic analysis and data science are very tightly integrated. And this is the trend that is only going to continue, right? This is just an example from one of the assignments that I give to students, right? This is predicting in US inflation 1 year from now. And you see that the black line is the true inflation, and the blue and red lines are the lines that are obtained by two popular machine learning methods. One is this regularized regression, Lasso, and the other one is the random forest. And so you see that, these are forecasts 1 year ahead, right? So I'm telling today what's going to be inflation 12 months from now. So they're doing pretty well. And this is something, that you would be able to do, and it is highly, highly valued by companies, right? Companies such as Amazon, they have 3 skill buckets for economists, right? Forecasting and time series, causal estimation, and structural modeling, right? Which is kind of causal estimation with a bit more technical modeling, right? And all of these kind of 3 skills to some degree will be taught in this program, right, from the economic side, with very tight integration from computing and statistics, particular data science techniques on the data science and mathematics side, right? So this is just to show that, recent Nobel Prize was shared by, recent 2 Nobel Prizes were shared by people who work on, empirical economics, right? So 2 years ago was Banerjee, 1 year ago was Banerjee, Duflo, and Kremer, who studied poverty using quasi-experiments, right? So this is again answering causal prediction questions. This year was Angrist and other economists who use, again, economic data for causal inference, right? And so new methods such as double debiased machine learning, for example, allow to sort of go further in this kind of studies, right? We had some questions about, where can I go after a degree like this? So this is just a profile of one of my students who I know very well because he did a few classes and honors thesis with me. And so he didn't have this kind of luxury of being trained in data science and economics. So he had to pick up these techniques in his own free time when doing his thesis. Still, he started out as an economist with the MTI, where he applied a lot of, predictive modeling using machine learning techniques, etc. Then he moved on to senior data analyst at Workforce Singapore. And finally, right now, he's at Grab, and he was giving a short talk to students during my introductory module last semester, right, DSE 101. And, it was actually found that a lot of the stuff he does in the day-to-day job is highly relevant to what is being taught in this program. Right, so to summarize, the adoption of methods from machine learning and data science field in economic research and practice is growing rapidly. Economics is an important domain knowledge area in many jobs, right, that also require data science skills. So right now, if you have a pure economic major and you go into these companies, that they will ask you to learn these things yourself, right? There is almost no escaping that, right? The economic man of ideas is gone. There are very few jobs where you can get away by deriving first order conditions on the board. Everything is quantitative these days, and everybody wants a quantifiable, actionable insight, right? And obviously, if you're considering graduate studies, DSE in economics is an extremely good platform, right? Because then you can go into many fields that combine sort of economic and also financial skills, right? Economics, finance, and skills such as econometrics, data analytics, and machine learning. So there is a potential ocean of opportunities for both academic research and on-the-job applications in this kind of interplay between economics and data science, right? So this is just a broad overview of, what you can expect to, from the integration part. Okay, so that's it from me, and feel free to ask any questions in the chat in the session, or drop me an email if you have any more specific questions on the economic side.
Thank you, Dennis. I would now like to invite Professor Chen Ying to say a few things about digital currencies and fintech, which are two of our research areas. So Ying, please.
Thanks, Tiong. Hi, everyone. I believe you already see my screen. Hi, good morning. I'm Chen Ying from Department of Mathematics. It's my big pleasure to give a short talk sharing trends in digital economy. Given this is a big topic, I think instead of showing you a comprehensive and complex picture, I would like to share some of research done by me and my colleagues in this field, with focus on digital finance or fintech, including network analysis of Bitcoins, energy forecasting, trading, as well as financial tax and sentiment analysis. Okay. We all agree that going digital is now an imperative for industry across all sectors, and everyone is nudged to pick up new skills as the economic ecosystem has been changing fast with many new technology. In the financial sector, I guess one impressive news years ago would be MAS issued 4 digital bank license to grab Singtel, which is a mother company of Shopee, And finance, we all know it has a lot of challenges now, and Greenland. If we look at the Singapore FinTech map 2022, we'll see that the growth of digital finance and far-reaching influence have brought about tremendous disruptions and reshaping financial industry in Singapore, from robo-advisors, also trading, fraud detection, digital currencies, until money laundering prevention. Here, I can give you some numbers. Between June and August 2020, customers signed up for DBS Bank's digital bank mobile apps rose by 216% year over year. Digital bank counts 3.5 million customers. OCBC has seen similar growth, reporting that the number of new SME accounts opened online grew 2.4 times in the first quarter 2020 compared to the previous year. So likewise, you see it also happened in UOB. The blockchain and the cryptocurrency segment is also booming, particularly in Singapore, making up 20% of all fintech companies here. It's followed by, let's say, 17% in terms of payments, 13% on investment wealth tech, and 10% reg tech using the blockchain. By one estimate, the digital economy is set to add more than $10 billion US, about, let's say, 13.5 billion Singapore dollar to Singapore's GDP by this year. With opportunities come challenges, right? For example, how we understand Bitcoin and its ecosystem. For your information, there are now more than 12,000 cryptocurrency, and last year was only 4,000 something. And what's truly astonishing is, of course, the growth rate. The number of cryptocurrency more than doubled from 2021 to 2022. At the end of 2021, the market was adding about 1,000 new cryptocurrency every month. While many of these cryptos have little to not following or trading volume, some enjoy extreme popularity, such as Bitcoin. Bitcoin network processes about 300,000 transactions per day, and it is estimated there are about between 400,000 to 800,000 addresses per day. Among them, some are influential, like Musk. Some are abnormal. For example, they may use Bitcoin to conduct money laundering, right? Some are active, but many of them are just a follower. Of course, identify these influential users can help to understand the dynamic money flows in the digital world. There are some challenges in the identification, of course, including we face big data. The data we consider include transaction details from, let's say, January 2009 until now, recorded every 10 minutes. The data are unstable and have a complex dynamic pattern. But with the proper math and data science methodology, we are able to deliver some findings. For example, we found in the past years, the second largest group in North America and Europe are leading the trend of Bitcoin price change. I'm happy to share that methodology we have developed are general applicable, not only for Bitcoin network, but also other types of large-scale network. In several other projects collaborating with Zuse Institute Berlin and OGE, where OGE is the largest natural gas transporter company in Germany, we modeled and predicted day-ahead gas demand and supply at hourly time resolution. Here are one illustration where the blue one represents the actual future values, and the red one is our 1 day ahead prediction. When we say 1 day ahead, that means we need to predict 24 hours ahead. As we can see that for different types of nodes in, let's say, this high pressure gas pipeline network in Germany, our forecast is quite accurate and robust. In the digital world, real data are always complex with high dimensionality, high frequency, nonlinear dependence, and unforeseeable structure change. We developed data-driven adaptive approach that is capable to detect the dynamic change quickly and allows automation for implementation of AI. Here are some projects we have completed, including term structural interest rate prediction for the next 3 to 12 months. The black one is true, blue one is our forecast, and the red one is the best alternative. We also worked with a limit order book that is, let's say, time-stamped up to millisecond. What we did here is to predict accumulated liquidity on both bid and ask sides. The gray one is a true future, while the blue and red are forecast for the next 50 minutes. This is just one illustration for Apple. We also derived a trading strategy using stochastic control and deep learning. The idea is to provide optimal solution under stochastic environment and develop automatic implementation at mesoscopic time scale, somewhere up to seconds, with realistic settings such as self-exciting effects are endogenous, where the trader's own submission trigger child order and influence the long-term price dynamics. The price process is driven by permanent and instantaneous impact together, the existence of transaction cost and tax. The modern quantitative finance is interdisciplinary. We need to master data science methods that are able to work with big data, advanced math models, and high-performance computers. Not only GPU server, supercomputer, but also the future, for example, quantum computing. We recently organized a workshop, Frontier in FinTech and Quantum Computing 2022 in Risk Management Institute and Center for Quantitative Finance, where 7 speakers shared the latest advance in quantum finance and FinTech. And we will continue organizing similar events in digital economy related topics in the sooner future. Another direction of my research is analyzing text data, including financial analyst reports, news patents, 10K form, and others. These data are called unstructured, meaning classical methods are unable to handle them, but all agree that they contain valuable information. Therefore, we are interested to extract them in a proper way, convert them to quantitative data efficiently that can add on in our financial analysis. In some projects, we developed an approach to detect keywords in customers' online feedback to help executives and managers to pinpoint the service and the product to be improved. In another project, we show that using our method, one can enhance the future return prediction dramatically from merely 1.6% to 14%. As said, opportunity comes with challenge, right? Not only in research, which I personally feel more fun facing the challenge, but also in education. In the ever-changing, increasingly complex world, it's more important than ever that our students should be prepared to bring knowledge and skill to solve problems, make sense of information, and know how to gather and evaluate evidence to make decisions. I personally think that genuine education is not only inserting the fancy stuff of information into a person, namely teaching state or arts and how, but also eliciting knowledge, stimulating mind, and training the ability to solve problem in the future, although we don't know which problem may happen in the future. In the DSE program, we carefully designed modules such as the digital currency, data science in FinTech, which introduce the new technology tools to analyze and theory behind. In both modules, we involve industry professionals such as IBM, DBS, who are standing in the frontier of the related industry to either co-teach or engage with our students. You can see there are also many other newly designed modules to, integrate the knowledge and methods in, let's say, math, statistics, econ, data science, and also computer program. So I would say, please join us in data science and economics. And at the end, I would like to introduce some of my colleagues in mathematics. Of course, there are also many colleagues in, let's say, statistics, as Prof Lim already mentioned, and also in econ, as Dr. Dennis mentioned. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ying. All right, I'll probably put this slide back again to just make sure that everybody knows that you can still continue to send your questions to askchs@nus.edu.sg. Thank you, everybody. I believe a poll will be conducted now. So Ms. Jenny Squaw will take over to let you know what needs to be done. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ying. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This brings us to the end of this session. See you for the afternoon talks.